All right, so on this channel, we focus a lot on what the Cleveland Browns issues are, where they struggle, where they need to get better, and also where their strengths are. But the Cleveland Browns aren't the only team that's going to affect the Cleveland Browns' success this year, right? The division matters a lot. And the fact of the matter is that this Browns with the AFC North is just a quite loaded division when you look at everything that this division has to offer, all the star players. I mean, there's former MVPs, there's Joe Burrow, there's all those wide receivers on the Bengals, there's TJ Watt, the defensive player of the year. I mean, there are accolades to go around for the players and the quality of players and the quality of teams in this division for days. So what I want to look at is the biggest flaw with every AFC North team. And I'm going to start with the Cleveland Browns, right? Because I already know a video like this is going to attract a lot of outside fans who get mad because I pointed out a flaw on their team, and they're going to feel like I think that my team, the team that I cover on a day-to-day basis, the Cleveland Browns, is impeccable, right? That's just not the truth. That's not how I cover things on this channel. So just to get things straight with y'all, the biggest flaw with the Cleveland Browns right now, one, quarterback availability. Have no idea what that's going to look like. We know that Jacoby Brissett's probably going to start some games. I feel comfortable with that. But Watson would be the piece that puts this team over the top. We don't know what the status of Watson is going to be for 2021 and on. So with 2022 and on. So that's obviously in there. The next thing that's a flaw with the Cleveland Browns is new pieces on the offensive line, right? We're talking about a new center, and we're talking about potentially a new right tackle just because Jack Conklin has had injury history throughout his entire 10 years at Cleveland Browns, so I would not expect that to go away. We know Chris Hubbard has had 2 season-ending injuries in a row as well, so that can be something that can keep him out. So we're talking about James Hudson, we're talking about Nick Harris, and we're expecting a little bit of a jump from Jedrick Wills in his 3rd year. So that's kind of an issue, right? Can that O-line reach close to the peaks that they reached in 2020 with these new pieces? That's going to be something for the Browns to look at during camp. Also, another flaw with the Cleveland Browns is less than ideal D-line depth. Now, you got Myles Garrett and you got Jadeveon Clowney, so this is far from a train wreck. But after that, you kind of worry, right? You have some prove-it pieces in there, right? Perrion, who I like a lot. Prove it, though. He still has to prove it. Taven Bryan, he's a prove it piece. Chase Winovich is going to be an okay backup, but he's not somebody who should start. Jadeveon Clowney also has a noted injury history. Can't just rely on him can't just expect him to play the full 17 games. If he does, he does. But, you know, it was kind of rare what the Browns got last year when it comes to the health of Jadeveon Clowney. So those are the biggest flaws with the Cleveland Browns. Not the biggest flaws in the world, but I mean, the quarterback one is a big flaw, but other than that, we'll see what happens as time goes on. Now let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens, who are a team that I think has the biggest boomer bust regular season potential. The Baltimore Ravens, I don't think any team in the AFC North is going to be the 1 seed, other than the Baltimore Ravens have the possibility to be the 1 seed. And if there's one team that can achieve it, it is the Baltimore Ravens, just because they have proven to be a spectacular regular season team. How their offense works tends to not be an issue in the regular season, really just in the postseason. And I think they have a great boomer bust potential, because I think a lot of people forgot how good the Ravens are, and the fact that the Ravens were in first place at 8-3 before Lamar Jackson got hurt versus the Cleveland Browns in that second game. Not saying he was playing tremendous, but they were 8-3 with Lamar Jackson. Lost the last 6 games of the year, I believe, and kind of skid from there. But the Ravens, when it comes to flaws, they have a good amount of flaws, right? When you're a boomer bust team, you're going to have some flaws that you're going to want to work out for you. What is the health of your running backs? They have not 1, but 2 running backs coming back from what were off-season, season-ending injuries, right? It's one thing when you're in week 8 and you have an injury that takes you out for the rest of the year. It's another thing when you're in training camp and you have an injury that takes you out for the rest of the year. Those are more serious injuries, right? We don't know what the status is of J.K. Dobbins. We don't know what the status is of Gus Edwards. But we know that those 2 pieces are going to be critical to the Baltimore Ravens' success going forward, especially offensively. Why do I say that? Well, it's the second flaw with the Baltimore Ravens. It's Greg Roman's offense. Now, I'm not going to say this from my perspective. I'm going to say this from what Willie Snead said in a quote earlier today, right? When he was talking about the criticisms about the Greg Roman offense and what he found to be valid criticisms of that Greg Roman offense. The quote is, here's the quote from Willie Snead, who said, "Yeah, it's tough when we're comparing Greg Roman to a Sean Payton offense or Greg Roman to a John Gruden offense. It's like night and day." It's not good. There's a lot more creativity in the passing game. If the Ravens had more creativity in the passing game and had more of an emphasis on it during the season, I think there would be more receivers open to come in because Lamar is a great player to play with. He's all about the team. He's fun. He brings energy every single day. You want to play with quarterbacks like that, but the system pushes guys away. That's why the Ravens are always drafting 2 wide receivers every year. They keep them young. They keep them locked in on contracts. But for older veteran guys coming in, he might get one shot to do this. I don't know if the Ravens are going to be that one shot for them unless they're a tight end or a big body receiver who can get those 50-50 balls. So that's the problem with the Ravens offense, right? When people talk about the Ravens offense is that when it comes to how they use wide receivers, it's just not a fairly efficient way to use them, and they don't get the ball that much, which ultimately limits their offense. I think the Greg Roman offense is a lot like a crutch, right? And the crutch can be real helpful when you need the crutch. But once you outgrown the crutch can actually hold you back. And that's what's going on with the Baltimore Ravens. I think a lot of Raven fans actually feel that way. They would like to see the team get more involved with wide receivers. And I get the argument on the other side is that, hey, Lamar has had more success running the ball. But he has had that lack of, well, I wouldn't even say lack of success. He has not had an equal amount of success throwing the ball. But also he's throwing the ball in what is one of the most simple offensive schemes in football, which means it's one of the most easiest to defend passing schemes in football. So how can we judge him as a passer when the Greg Roman offense doesn't really give him a good enough outlet to exercise that passing ability, which has ultimately been the complaint from the wide receivers. And I think Lamar Jackson himself, as the Ravens have steadfast on this Greg Roman thing, right? It's pushed away Marquise Brown. It's pushed away a ton of guys throughout the year. And it might even push away Lamar Jackson because of Lamar feels like he's more capable as a passer, but he's stuck in this very rudimentary passing system that is easy to figure out for opposing defenses. Then he's going to ultimately feel like he's being held back. He doesn't mind running, I don't think, but it's that he can't evolve that part of his game because it's not complex enough for him to fully utilize in a way that's going to be effective against NFL defenses anymore. And that's always been the problem with Greg Roman offenses, right? It was a crutch for Cam Newton. And then once Cam Newton got away from that, he had his MVP year. And it's the same thing going on right now with Baltimore. You can even argue the same thing kind of happened with Colin Kaepernick when he was in San Francisco, right? So the Greg Roman offense is great for young players at the beginning of their career, but once those players get ready for more, you're kind of stuck in a system that holds you back. But the issue with the Greg Roman offense is also you're going to be a good team with it. So it's kind of hard to make the case that you should fire him. But I think he should move on at this point. But that's going to be one of the biggest weaknesses with the Baltimore Ravens is their wide receiving and passing game deficiencies. Also offensive line health. Ronnie Stanley coming back from a ACL injury. I think, a year and a half ago? I think he's been out for a while now. Yeah, he's been out for almost 2 years. So we don't know who Ronnie Stanley going to be coming back from that amount of injuries, right? When it's 1 year, you usually come back and be the same. 2 years is a completely different thing, right? You might be some of your old self, but it's no guarantee that you're going to be your complete old self. So they don't know what Ronnie Stanley's going to be like. And if he can't hold down the fort at left tackle anymore, and then you're back to putting up Big Andy out there, and that didn't work last year for the Ravens. The next team that we're going to talk about, the biggest flaw for Pittsburgh, quarterback, big flaw for them, right? I am famously low on the Kenny Pickett pick. I know other people are higher on him than I am, but my issue with Kenny Pickett is I feel like Mitchell Trubisky has more upside than Kenny Pickett, and you just drafted Kenny Pickett in the first round. You signed Mitchell Trubisky off the street. So that's my big issue with the Kenny Pickett pick is that I think at best he's not even better than Mitchell Trubisky. So I don't know where you go from there. That's a bad spot to be in. And unlike the Browns, where the Browns have a good enough roster to kind of get away with having a deficiency or a question mark at the quarterback position, Pittsburgh is not like that, right? If you look at Pittsburgh's defense, sure, the defensive line is like really good, but everything outside of that stinks. They brought in Miles Jack, who stunk last year. They have Devin Bush or Joe Schobert. They might bring back Joe Schobert, but right now it's Devin Bush and Miles Jack. They stunk. Both of those guys stunk last year. Their corner situation is not great. Their safety situation is not great. Minkah coming off of the worst year that he had last year. And it's been proven that when Minkah does not have that level of support that allows him to play his true position and he has to roam around more on the defense, he plays much worse. There's been no indication that that's going to change in Pittsburgh. So I would expect a similar performance from Minkah that you got last year, this year, right? This is more or less in line with what he did in Miami versus what he did the one year where they had adequate support around him in Pittsburgh. So that being said, their defense is kind of a question mark. Their offense has been a question mark, right? Quarterback plays bad. The offensive line is not that good. And yeah, they have Najee Harris, who's pretty good, but behind him, they stink, right? Anthony McFarland, Benny Snell, those aren't anybody that's going to put any fear into anybody, right? Especially when you compare it to what other teams have in this division alone. It's just unimpressive offensively. Defense has a bunch of huge question marks outside of the defensive line. Pittsburgh has a lot of things wrong with them, but they are Pittsburgh, right? So you expect them to go 500. We'll see what they do. And then the team with the least flaws is actually the Cincinnati Bengals. Only thing I could come up with was defensive depth, because they had a relative amount of health last year that I don't think is going to be reciprocated this year, and they're not necessarily the most top-heavy team to begin with. So if they get stretched thin defensively, this might be a team that has to rely on the offensive output to win them games, which is just going to net them less wins by the default of that. Also, interior offensive line, Leo Collins and Jonah Williams is fine on the edge, but on the interior, you still got a lot of questions. Jackson Carman, I'm not even close to sold on him yet. They brought in a center. I'm questionable about that interior offensive line for the Bengals, and that's the kind of pressure that kind of affects quarterback play the most. So we'll see what happens with them, but those are the biggest flaws for all the AFC North teams right now. Let me know what you think are the biggest flaws in all the AFC North teams down in the comment section below. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.